Welcome back to Meaningful, Insightful Conversation. I'm Trevor.
And I'm Emma. Today we're diving into a contentious issue, Joe Rogan's critique of Canadian policies and media freedom based on a video by True North.
It's a topic that sparked a lot of debate, Emma. Rogan's comments have really stirred the pot.
What does it say about your country when the world's top podcaster calls it a frozen communist hellhole and the bought and paid for legacy media tell you the complete opposite?
You live in the frozen communist hole of Canada. Yeah.
Or when the most watched journalist on American cable TV at the time routinely calls your leader a tyrant.
It's funny, Trudeau always seemed like a cheerful idiot, wearing weird costumes and yammering on about diversity. Who knew he was Mussolini?
And the response is not to investigate the accuracy of those claims, but instead to ban that channel from being aired inside of your country outright. Or when the world's richest man says your country has no freedom of speech, which is obviously true, but then the paid-off press run a story about how Elon Musk is spreading misinformation. Now, all of this is happening right now in Canada. The rest of the world is trying to tell us that something is deeply wrong inside of our country.
Rogan's description of Canada as a frozen communist hellhole is a jarring contrast to the often positive portrayal in other media. It raises questions about media bias and freedom of speech.
It's a bold statement, Emma. But is it fair? Canada is known for its politeness and progressive policies. This portrayal seems a bit one-sided.
Obviously, Canada will always defend freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, freedom of peaceful protest. That's something that's extremely important to us. At the same time as we're always there to prevent violence, to push back against hatred. I think on the issue of the community, it's important to remember that the actions of the few do not represent the entire community or Canada.
It's hyperbolic, but it highlights the concern about free speech in Canada. The video points out the absence of constitutional rights to free speech, a stark contrast to the U.S.
But Emma, freedom of speech varies globally. Canada's approach might differ from the U.S., but does that make it less valid?
New decree, online streaming services that operate in Canada offering broadcasting content and earn $10 million or more annually, they need to register with the Government of Canada. Ottawa also made it compulsory for certain online streaming services to provide the regulator with the information which is related to their content and subscription. Also, users and individuals who use social media to share podcasts are not required to register. Responding to a tweet posted by journalist and author Glenn Greenwald, who was commenting on the ruling, Musk called Trudeau curbing free speech shameful. Well, journalist Glenn says that the Canadian government armed with one of the world's most repressive online censorship schemes. Notably, this is not the first time that Trudeau government has been accused of acting against free speech. In February 2022, Trudeau invoked emergency powers. For the first time in the country's history, this was done in order to arm the government with more power to respond to the trucker demonstrations who were opposing the vaccine mandates at that time in Canada.
The criticism of Trudeau's government is significant. The video suggests a trend toward internet censorship and information control in Canada.
The online censorship bills in Canada, like Bill C-10, have been controversial. They've raised international concerns about free expression.
Is no culture without freedom of expression. Just to point out the disinformation from that member. He says all artists support this. Well, even Margaret Atwood, no conservative, has said that this bill represents creeping totalitarianism. Creeping totalitarianism. It gives the power to a woke agency, the CRTC, named by Liberals, to manipulate social media algorithms in order to shut down voices it does not want people to hear. When will this government realize that Orwell's 1984 was not an instruction manual?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, these are the same old talking points from the Conservative Party, and it happens to be the same talking points of big tech. Mr. Speaker, why don't they finally stand up to the big guys and big tech in this country and try to do what we're doing and making sure that big tech is going to be paying their fair share to Canadian artists, Canadian producers, you know, to our local media. But instead of standing up for Canadians, these folks are standing up for the Googles, etc. Mr. Speaker, I ask them to come onto the right side and please support Canadians and people who produce these content.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And therein lies the problem. The government will get to decide what is the right side of the debate and shut down everyone they consider to be on the wrong side. Let's be clear, this bill doesn't hurt big tech. They'll still monopolize all of social media. Their platforms will still dominate. It's just that government bureaucrats will be able to manipulate the algorithms to shut down the voices of individual Canadians. Top experts on freedom of expression online say that, and so does Margaret Atwood, who calls this creeping totalitarianism. If the Prime Minister is not afraid of debate, why is he so determined to shut it down?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
The reality is that right now the tech giants are not paying their fair share. And 71% of Canadians agree that they should be doing so. And this is the reason why. That's why we are making sure that we have C11 to deal with this job. We know that the web giants must do more. Mr. Speaker, more for our culture, more for our local media, more to protect our children. That's exactly what we're doing.
Let's delve deeper. Bill C-10 aims to regulate online content, but critics argue it could infringe on free speech. It's a delicate balance between combating hate speech and preserving freedom.
But isn't regulation necessary in some cases, Emma? Online platforms can be breeding grounds for misinformation and hate.
Regulation is necessary, but it's about how it's done. Overreach could stifle legitimate expression. It's a global challenge, not just in Canada.
American search engine company Google says it will block access to Canadian news content when the government's Online News Act takes effect at the end of the year. The law will require tech giants to strike deals with Canadian news outlets to pay for content. Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, will also block access to Canadian news for Canadian users. Earlier, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Meta's ban threat was a bullying tactic and that his government would not back down. The CBC's David Thurton is in Ottawa with the reaction to the Google decision.
Not a lot of people are surprised by the decision by Google to announce that it's going to be blocking Canadian news. We've seen other tech giants take a similar move here in Canada and elsewhere. So not a lot of people were surprised. A lot of people were expecting Google to announce that they were taking this move. And it's all in reaction, as you were saying, Natalie, to the government's Online News Act, which is an attempt by the federal government to help newsrooms out who have seen a lot of ad revenue migrate from their newspapers, from their broadcast platforms, to these digital platforms that are controlled by places such as Google and also Meta, the parent company that owns Facebook. In fact, they announced that they will be adopting a similar approach, blocking access to Canadian news. Google just confirming today that it will be doing the same. We do have a statement from Google saying that it is disappointed that they have to make good on their threat. It goes on to say in a blog post that the unprecedented decision to put a price on links, the so-called link tax, so they're talking about the government's legislation, creates uncertainty for our products and exposes us to uncapped financial liability simply for facilitating access to news from Canadian publishers.
That's true. And it's not just a Canadian issue. We're seeing similar debates in Europe and the U.S. about regulating the digital space.
The role of media in shaping public perception is crucial. The True North video criticizes Canadian legacy media for not thoroughly investigating claims against Trudeau.
But media bias is a complex issue. One person's credible source is another's biased commentator. It's about understanding different perspectives.
Absolutely, Trevor. Media literacy is key. Understanding biases and seeking diverse viewpoints are crucial in today's information landscape.
So we're looking at a multifaceted issue. It's about freedom of speech, media bias, governmental policies, and their intersection in the digital age.
This topic is complex and multi-layered. The video by True North, along with the additional clips, offer diverse perspectives that challenge us to think critically.
Absolutely, Emma. And to our listeners, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with Rogan's critique? How do you view media freedom in Canada and beyond?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll explore another pressing socio-political issue.